Math 122, week number 9. This is our next to last homework on measures of variation. Last week we did measures of center, the mean and the median. Measures of variation, we're typically going to talk about the standard deviation. Your homework is ask 7 2-month-old babies to say, find standard deviation. I will change the data set to talk about 7 male college students and how tall they are, but it's going to be the same process. I'll go through the steps, and hopefully you'll understand the process. A lot of legwork, but I don't think any of the steps are mind-blowing and taken one by one. First thing we need to get is the x's. In math, x stands for a measurement. What am I measuring in this case? I'm measuring 7 college students. Take those 7 numbers, plug them in. No math involved, just cut and paste. Next up, x with a bar over top. X with a bar over top stands for the mean or the average. Well, you know how to do that. We did that last week. You take all the numbers, add them up, divide by how many you have. We got an answer. You're going to have decimals. Go ahead and leave the decimals around a 3 decimal place. You don't round it off to 70, for instance. But we're going to take that number, plug it in the chart. There's only one number, so you have to repeat it 7 times to fill up the chart. All right. We've got the first 2 columns of my chart. How do we get the third? Well, we go sideways. We're going to subtract those numbers. We're going to take the x and we're going to subtract the x bar. One by one, we got to do it 7 times. Yeah, it's a lot of legwork, as I said. But once again, one by one, it's not. I mean, this is subtracting, nothing mind-blowing. You're going to have negative answers, and that's fine. We're going to keep our decimals. How do we get to the last column over here? We're going to have to square our answers. Squaring, as you know, means take the number and multiply it by itself. And if you have an iPhone or a scientific calculator, Android phone, you usually have a key that will do the squaring automatically. If not, multiply by itself, and you're going to get those calculations. All right, a lot of decimals. Oh, by the way, last column, check it out. All the negative sides vanished. When you square a number, it's going to be positive. So we have all these positive numbers. We got some decimals. It's a little messy, but we filled in the chart. All right. What do we do with my chart? Well, now we're only halfway there. You know, standard deviation, it's a lot of legwork. But what do we do with this formula? It's kind of big. It's intimidating. A lot of numbers, a lot of letters and stuff in there. Let's break it down one by one. The x minus x bar to the squared. Well, that's what we just did right here. What does that symbol mean? That is the Greek letter means sigma. Sigma means to add those numbers up. So I know that's a kind of a new symbol, but remember, it just means something basic that you know how to do. You know how to take a calculator and add a bunch of numbers together. So 31.429. All right. Bottom part of the formula, n minus 1. What does this n stand for? N, in math, in general, usually stands for how many numbers you're measuring. In this case, we're measuring 7 people. All right. So we now turn our formula into this. We take out all the letters and symbols and so forth, and we put in these things. Where did these come from? Remember, the top number comes from the 31 from adding everything together. And the bottom number turns into 6 because there's 7 numbers and we take away one of them. All right. Calculator's going to take care of that. We get 2.289, and that's our standard deviation. We're done. A lot of steps, but what was I doing? I had to do some subtracting. I had to do a squaring. I had to do adding, and then do a square root at the end. Basic operations, just a lot of them put together. Number 2. Looking about the same thing. I'm talking about standard deviation, but now I've got a ton of numbers here. Well, these are the numbers that you're going to be dealing with. I'm going to change the numbers slightly working through this. But when I'm asking you to calculate the average, when I'm asking you to calculate the standard deviation, it's pretty intimidating when I got 40 numbers. Are you asking me to do that giant process with 40? No. I'm being very clear. Do not do what we just did on number 2. Number 2, I'm saying go to Excel and let's try and tackle this. So in Excel, what am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to put all those numbers in. All right, a little bit of typing, but let's go see how the process once you get these numbers into Excel. So I'm going to take a break from that, and I'm going to go right here. And you'll see on my Excel spreadsheet, I do have those numbers already typed in. Maybe you have to type them in, but let's face it, that's not too much legwork. Part A, average value. Excel will do these calculations for you automatically. The first thing you need to do is you need to equals. Equals tells Excel, think like a computer. Think like all the different things you can do. Think like a calculator. I'm sorry, that's what I want to say. So what do I want it to do? I want it to do the average. I start typing and look at it. Pops right up here. Wow. All right, click it. And you see Excel says, sure, tell me the average. And that little parenthesis means put in some numbers. What numbers do I want to put in? I want to put in all these numbers. So I am clicking and pulling. I'm click that and I hold it until it gets all the numbers I want. If you just click it and move around, it doesn't do it. Click, hold it, and move around. I want the average of all those numbers. And then I close the parenthesis and hit enter. And it, ta-da, right there. It's 81.475. Oh, not bad. Next one up, find the standard deviation. Let's try the same thing. Hit equals. So it's starting to think like a calculator. and I start to type standard, STD, and then it gives me this list of STDEV, standard deviation. Go to STDEV S right there. So I double click that. STDEV S, it has that parenthesis. Parenthesis means give me some numbers. I say, you want numbers? Here you go. Click, pull it across. I got all those numbers in there. Close my parentheses, hit enter, and Excel just magically throws out the number 6.65. All right, we've got the average and the standard deviation. For these last two, these usual and unusual, I'm going to jump back to the PowerPoint chart, and let's check out how to do this. All right, so I got this. We've got the, we have the mean from the Excel. Mean, average, 81.475. We have the standard deviation, 6.6563. If you've checked the lecture notes, or if you watch my other video on the discussion board, I mentioned the minimum unusual value. We have that formula. Maximum, we have this formula. And so what am I going to do? I'm going to take the average and put it on a number line. Why is the average in the middle? Think about what the average means. Average means roughly right in the middle. If I'm trying to talk about 70%, then I want to look at the minimum. And the minimum, this formula tells me to go down twice, -2. So in other words, I'm going to jump down twice. But why does it say 6.563? Well, because it says go down twice by the standard deviation. Okay, so that's why we're using the standard deviations to figure out how much I need to jump by. All right, well, that's a calculation. I can do that. I minus 1 by 6.563, and I minus again by 6.6563, and I get my answer 68.349. That is my minimum cutoff. In other words, if I'm below that, then I start to feel like it's unusual. If I'm below 68, then it's a little unusual. What was I focusing on? I was focusing on 70% of the students. So if I label 70 on my number line, it's going to be down there somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where, but I certainly know that it's not below that. It's bigger than my cutoff, so it's not unusual. It's low, but it's not unusual. If that process makes sense, we'll follow along for the maximum, because I'm looking at 100% of the students. Well, the maximum says I need to jump up twice. So, all right, I jumped twice. Why 6.563? Because that's the standard deviation. All right, if I'm jumping up, I got to do an addition. So that's basic adding. I add twice, because that's what the formula says, and I get 94.601. That's my maximum. That's the maximum usual value for one of these, for how many students pass the exam. I'm analyzing everything above it. It's going to be unusual. I'm analyzing 100%, and if I was going to plot that on my point, well, it'd be up here somewhere. That's unusual. It's bigger than my cutoff, so it's going to be unusual. All right, there's a lot of moving parts. Hopefully it makes sense in terms of, or you can rewatch the video to kind of go through some of the steps that might have been confusing. But that is the outline for week number 9. I want to emphasize that there is online tutoring Saturday, 12 to 2 on Zoom meetings if you have any questions about the homework.